Today, we're diving into the science that separates good athletes from truly great ones. For any athlete, from the weekend warrior all the way to the seasoned pro, this is the ultimate question. It's the tightrope walk that stands right between making consistent progress and hitting that wall of fatigue and burnout. And it turns out, the answer to that question lies in understanding two powerful and often competing effects that happen after every single workout you do. So let's unpack the science that can guide every decision you make about your training, your recovery, and ultimately your performance. We all want to push our limits, right? That's the heart of competition. But how do we balance that incredible drive with the very real risks of injury, chronic fatigue, and those incredibly frustrating plateaus? It's a constant tightrope walk. The right amount of training stress, well, that's the magic ingredient your body needs to adapt and get stronger. That's the whole goal. But if you tip the scales just a little too far with too much volume or not enough recovery, that exact same stress starts to cause breakdown instead of buildup. So to solve this exact problem, scientists way back in 1975 developed a simple but incredibly powerful framework. And it's a model that has absolutely stood the test of time. It's still fundamental to sports science today. And here it is, the fitness fatigue model. The core concept is just beautifully simple. Think of every single workout having two opposite effects. It builds a positive fitness gain, but at the very same time, it creates a negative fatigue gain. Your actual performance on any given day, it's just the difference between those two. Okay, but here's the key insight. This is where it gets really interesting. These two forces, they operate on completely different timelines. Fitness is like a long-term investment. It builds up kind of slowly, but it sticks around for a while. It's the tortoise. Fatigue, on the other hand, well, that's the hare. It hits you fast and hard, but it also disappears much, much more quickly. And this timeline shows us exactly what that looks like in practice. During a heavy training block, fatigue piles up so fast that it actually masks your fitness gains. You might even feel slower or weaker, which is totally normal. But then when you taper and you let yourself recover, that short-term fatigue just evaporates, revealing all that hard-earned fitness underneath. This effect is called supercompensation, and it's the secret to hitting your peak at exactly the right moment. So if performance is basically just a formula, that begs the question, how do we actually get the numbers? Let's explore how we can quantify our effort and turn this powerful theory into a practical tool for much smarter training. Well, one of the most common ways to quantify our internal training load is by using heart rate. By targeting specific intensity zones, which aren't really just percentages of your max heart rate, we can get a pretty solid idea of how much physiological stress our body is under. And this idea leads to a really useful metric called TRIMP, or training impulse. It's a simple way to boil down the entire stress of a workout, how long and how hard, into a single comparable number. This lets you track your total training dose over time. Now, that's great for endurance, but what about strength training? Well, over here, the gold standard metric is the 1 rep max, or 1 RM. It's the absolute most weight you can possibly lift for a single rep. But as you can probably imagine, trying to find this number by actually doing it, well, it can be pretty risky. And this is so important. The crucial point here is that we don't have to risk injury to find our max strength. We can use well-established formulas to accurately estimate our 1 rep max from a much safer submaximal effort, like finding out what your 5 rep max is. This is absolutely vital for programming workouts that are both effective and safe. But of course, science never just stands still. Researchers are constantly refining how we model the outer limits of human endurance, and it's leading to some really fascinating new insights. So things get really interesting when we look at how scientists model the absolute limits of endurance. Right now, there's a major debate happening over how to best predict how long an athlete can sustain a certain effort. It's really a clash between the classic critical power model and a newer power law model. And this chart really shows you what's going on. The classic critical power model, it works pretty well for efforts that last between about 2 and 15 minutes. But for very short sprints or really long endurance events, its error rate climbs way up. And that's why recent large-scale studies on runners, rowers, and cyclists are pointing towards the power law model. It just seems to be far more accurate across a much wider range of durations. Okay, so why does this academic debate matter for your next race? Because each model gives you very different advice on pacing. The classic model kind of suggests that starting a race a little too fast is a mistake you can recover from. But the newer power law model, it predicts that going out too hard is way more catastrophic to your final performance. Basically, it's a mistake you just can't come back from. So, how do we take all this theory, all this math and data, and actually apply it in the real world? Let's look at how modern technology is changing the whole game for today's athletes. It all starts with understanding a fundamental trade-off that governs pretty much all human movement, the force-velocity relationship. It sounds complicated, but it's not. There is an inverse relationship. The faster you try to move, the less force you can produce. Think about it. You can deadlift a very heavy weight slowly, or you can jump with a light weight very quickly, but you simply can't deadlift a heavy weight quickly. And this is where modern tech just comes in and blows the doors wide open. We can now measure these principles with incredible precision. GPS trackers give us hard data on our external load, like speed and power, while heart rate monitors tell us all about our internal stress. And now, wearables can even track our sleep and recovery, giving us a full 24/7 picture of our readiness to perform. And this leads to some truly game-changing tools like velocity-based training, or VBT. By attaching a simple sensor to the barbell, these systems can measure the speed of every single lift in real time. This is huge because it allows an athlete to auto-regulate their training, basically adjusting the weight on any given day based on how fast they're moving, which is a direct measure of their readiness and fatigue. So here's the ultimate takeaway. When we combine these powerful models of stress and recovery with the precise, real-time data from modern technology, training stops being guesswork. It becomes a true science of optimization. We can finally make that leap from just training hard to training truly smart. So now you have the framework to understand how peak performance is built, how it's measured, and how it's optimized. The science is clear, and the tools are more accessible than ever before. The only question left is, how are you going to use it? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.